नमस्कार। आज से मैं वाल्मीकि रामायण जो 21 नोट्स चैनल पे है उसे शुरू करने जा रहा हूँ। दिस इज़ सीज़न 1। आई एम स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम एपिसोड 1। These are small episodes, so I'll do like 2-3 episodes in one video. Okay, anyway, let's begin. I'll give link to the original playlist in the description. Go and check it out. Come back and react with me. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Let's begin.
Ramayan, the story of Ram, the story that we know so well and yet know so little. We celebrate Dasra to mark Ram's victory over Ravan and Diwali on the day of his return to Ayodhya. And we may remember some of the stories from the Ramayan TV serial, YouTube videos, and comics. But who was Ram? Was he a person or God? Or both? Or was he neither and is all of Ramayan just fiction?
I'm loving the animations. They are on point and they are very brilliant. Like, was he human? Was he God? So they changed that whole human figure into a God figure, and then was he both? तो half of कर दिया. तो that was very brilliant. I assume आगे ऐसे है काफी कुछ.
Was Hanuman a monkey? Was Ravan really all that bad? And how did Ravan with his 10 heads enter a room? Did he make a sideways entry? And why, oh why, did Ram ask Sita to leave? Was a bridge really built to cross the sea to get to Lanka? And what about the Pushpak Viman? Answers to all these questions and much more is to be found in the Valmiki Ramayan, the story that Valmiki wrote soon after Ram's return from Lanka, and which
Actually, one thing I noticed is video का title है fact or fiction, which is something debated a lot in the Indian discourse. क्योंकि there is this whole group which says कि ये magical power, talking monkeys और ये सब कैसे हो सकता है, and then there is other group which says कि Mahabharat is part of इतिहास. Like इतिहास, but our scriptures clearly define what is mythology and what is history. So itihas is the Hindi word for history. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are put into the itihas category. So there is this whole debate. So abhi chalo, let's find out, do all these things actually happen? Pushpak Viman kahan se aa gaya in ancient times? Okay, did they actually did they actually build a bridge? And so other questions, all of those questions which are debated a lot. Did they actually happen? What does Valmiki Ramayan say? Which is the original source?
was later retold by Kalidas, Tulsidas, Kamb, and many others over the millennia. The story that has inspired millions over the ages in our land. I urge you to read the Valmiki Ramayan with me. In fact, I implore you. But why do that, you will ask? Yes, it's not easy. This is a book that has 500 chapters and 24,000 verses. And it is in Sanskrit. Besides, some of you may say, I'm not that religious in the conventional sense. But the Valmiki Ramayan is not a religious book in the conventional sense. There are no religious do's and don'ts in the book. As Valmiki explicitly states, it is the life story of a brave, just man who became a role model in his own lifetime. It is a historical book.
Those who are like very much rooted into the Sanatan Sanskriti, they wouldn't know okay, what do they mean by the conventional sense. See, religious book in a conventional sense is a book which describes all the commandments of a religion. So if you pick up Bible, there are stories in the Bible, but there are also commandments which say that if you are a Christian, then you have to do these things. If you pick up Quran, then it says कि if you are a Muslim, then you have to do all of these things. So there are do's and don'ts described if you are a follower of that religion. But that is not the case with Ramayana. Ramayana is a life story. So you could take it as a story. Like in history also there are stories, right? There are stories of kings and queens. So those are written in a much more क्या बोलते हैं, academic format. But our way of telling itihasa, according to the other category of people, is कि we tell it in a story format. ठीक है, we tell it in a poetic format so that it is entertaining as well as you get to know your history. So that is.
Valmiki himself says that this is Ramasya Charitam, Ram's biography, Ramasya Vrittam, Ram's story. And to make things crystal clear, he also says that what he is writing is itihas. Iti ha asa. That is how it happened. It is not surprising that some remain skeptical about this, given that this story has often been described just like the Mahabharat as mythology. Now don't take my word when I say that the Valmiki Ramayan is a historical text. But likewise, don't take anyone else's word for the opposite as well. Make up your own mind, but please only after reading the book, or in this case, listening. Disclaimer: many of us have a deep emotional connection with Ram, Sita, and Hanuman. We may have our preferred version of the Ramayan. This reading is based on the Valmiki Ramayan published by the Gorakhpur Press. So let us dust off this Adi Kavya, the oldest epic, and read it in its original form. 24,000 verses is a lot to cover. Thankfully, Valmiki gives us an executive summary at the beginning, which we will see in the next episode. Remember also Valmiki's instruction, Punyaya mitrebhyah preshayet janah. This means that you should forward this video to all your friends and groups on Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and all social media. Just kidding. Of course, Valmiki did not say that last line, but do forward nevertheless. Iti ha
Do it.
asa. That is how it happened.
Let's just continue the episode 2, I guess. We can have it in this video.
Valmiki Ramayan, Season 1, Episode 2, Executive Summary. In the previous episode, I had mentioned that Valmiki wrote his biography of Ram in 24,000 verses. 24,000! One could easily get lost in such a huge text. But thankfully, Valmiki gives us a summary of the story through a conversation between him and Narad. Right off the bat, in the second shlok itself, Valmiki asks, Konvasmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha virya.
I just love this music. I don't know whether it will stay or copyright lag jayega. So they have this tool of removing the music. So if it is not in the video, so you can go and check it out on the original video. The music is very good.
Dharmadnyascha kritadnyascha satyavakyo dridavratah. Who in the current world can be a great role model, endowed with righteousness, gratitude, truthfulness, and firmness in his vows? Note the use of the word sampratam. Now, he was looking for a contemporary person. And then Valmiki says, Etadichhamyaham shrotum param kautuhalam hime maharshe tvam samarthosi jnatumevam vidham naram. O Maharshi, I am very curious to know about such a man, if you know of one. Valmiki has said Naram at the end, person, not a fictional superhero. And so Narad tells him about Ram, the king of Ayodhya.
Achha, there is one thing that is skipped thoda sa, which is this: when Narad comes, he talks with Valmiki. So Valmiki describes 16 qualities that should be there in a man to qualify to be this persona. Okay? So Valmiki describes all these 16 qualities and then asks, do you know of such a man? And then Narad says, yes, I know a certain someone by the name of Ram.
He describes Ram's qualities in great detail. Apart from the qualities that Valmiki was looking for, here are some others that Narad mentions. His charm is captivating, yet he strikes terror in the hearts of his enemies. He is broad-shouldered and strong, with a tapering waist. Looks like a V-shaped body was the ideal then too. He is learned and wise. yet not vain. He is a prince, and yet a servant of his subjects. Narad then adds that indeed there is no one to rival him, and so Dashrath, the king of Ayodhya, rightly chose him to be his successor. But his stepmother Kaikeyi remembered Dashrath's two promises, and Dashrath was compelled to send away Ram into the forest for 14 years. Sita and Lakshman chose to go with Ram. The 14 years of Vanvas were almost coming to an end when Sita got abducted by
अच्छा
Ravan.
ये जो summary है ना, like Valmiki describes it, but this is a conversation between Narad and Valmiki. So Narad ji is telling about Ram to Valmiki ji to convince him ultimately to write Ramayana. So Narad ji थोड़ा briefly बता रहे हैं कि ये हुआ था and then it is up to you to go and do the research और सब कुछ पता करके अच्छे से लिखो because you are the writer, okay? So I'll just tell you what happened and you write about it. So this is that conversation.
Ram took help from Hanuman and the Vanaras and defeated and killed Ravan in a great battle. And in this manner, Narad gives us a summary of the story and the highlights of Ram's character. Pretty useful, I must say, especially since we are a generation that needs a summary slide before even a 10-page PowerPoint. In the next episode, we will get on with the story proper, where it all began, in the greatest and the grandest city in the world, Ayodhya. Iti ha asa. That is how it happened.
Just so you remember, Itihasa. Oh my god, this is very good. I don't want to stop. Let's do episode 3. And that is it. I'll do one more episode. Because at least let's start the story.
This is Valmiki Ramayan, Season 1, Episode 3. Ayodhya, the greatest and the grandest city on earth. Yep, you heard it right. Of course, we are not talking of Ayodhya of today. Rewind back a few thousand years.
There is one more little incident. I think they're not gonna cover that incident here, because it's not relevant to the story of Ramji. So the story, the incident is that after Narad tells Valmiki ji about this whole executive summary, Valmiki ji is like thinking about it and he's going about on his daily business. Then he goes out to some pond or some place. तो there also he's thinking about this story. तो वहाँ पे क्या होता है, एक हंसों का जोड़ा रहता है. तो एक hunter kills one of the pair. ठीक है, it's either the female or the male. So after one dies, ठीक है, this is a story we have heard in our childhood. Okay, so after one dies, तो दूसरा वाला क्या करता है, वो भी रो रो के मर जाता है. And Valmiki ji is very moved by this. ठीक है, he's deeply saddened. तो he curses that hunter. Okay, I don't know what he curses. Actually, I think he says कि तुम्हें कभी चैन नहीं मिलेगा, तुम्हें कभी संतुष्टि नहीं मिलेगी, something like that. तो but the point here is, जो वो curse होता है ना उनका, it is in Sanskrit. ठीक है, और it has a certain quality, like it has certain I don't remember exactly. It's certain pad होते हैं उसमें, and which forms a shlok. So that is when the first shlok ever came to him. तो he was like कि मैंने बोला, एक instinct में बोला, but जो भी मैंने बोला it's very poetic, कुछ अच्छा ही निकल गया. तभी like then Brahmadev comes to him and then Brahmadev says, yes, you are destined to write this story in this shlok form only. That's why that shlok I gave to you. Okay, and then Brahmadev gives him his blessing, and then he sees the whole of Rama's story like one sees a fruit on their palm. ठीक है, एक जैसे भूत भविष्य वर्तमान सब कुछ जैसे इतना क्लियरली देखा जैसे कि देयर इज अ फ्रूट ऑन योर हैंड. So that is the incident. There are certain more incidents about Rishi Valmiki himself, but let's see if they cover it. If they don't, then I'll tell you.
Valmiki tells us what this city on the southern bank of the Sharayu river looks like. Ayata dashaja dveja yojanani mahapuri Shrimati Trini Vistirna Suvibhakta Mahapatha. With well laid out streets, the beautiful and prosperous city of Ayodhya was 12 yojanas long and 3 yojanas wide. Rajamargena Mahata Suvibhaktena Shobhita Mukta Pushpavakirnena Jalasiktena Nityashah. A wide tree-lined royal boulevard ran through the center of the city. It was sprinkled with water daily. The city had beautiful gates and areas marked for different markets, or in other words, urban zoning. Its palaces were perfectly constructed in rows and inhabited by the noblest of men. Its mansions were adorned with precious stones. It was surrounded by a moat and impregnable. It had all kinds of machines, or a smart city, and weapons. Shatagni Shatasankulam, protected by hundreds of Shatagnis. The city echoed with the sounds of trumpets, mridangas, veenas and panavas. In other words, there was music in the air. No other city on earth was comparable to Ayodhya. In Ayodhya, we are told by Valmiki that women in groups roamed around freely and that the city had many theatre groups that comprised entirely of women. Now, this flies in the face of this mental construct we have in mind. Past equal to bad for women and modern equal to good or getting better for women. Now, that really depends on where you place the marker for past. If that is 100 or 200 years ago, then the construct is valid. But it appears that the construct is not valid if you slide the marker back a few thousand years. It is also interesting that Valmiki thought it important to mention that the city was then safe for women. Women's safety in public spaces still remains a critical issue for our modern cities across the world.
So people will say कि ऐसा क्यों? If women were safe thousands of years ago in this ancient Vedic times, then why are they not safe now? Because over the time things should have gotten more and more better. So there are like cycles of civilization, okay? And based on the current conditions, human beings react to them. So let's say if the society is prospering, okay, then we tend to look at other aspects of life like art, culture, women's rights, because in critical times, just animal instincts and primitive nature takes over. It becomes about survival of the fittest. तो जब society prosperous होती है, then we tend to think about all these like better aspects of life that make the life worth living. So it is completely possible क्योंकि उस time अगर society इतनी prosperous थी, then we had progressed into art and culture and women's safety and everything. And if the civilization deteriorated, then the animal instinct would have taken over, and it had become more primitive in nature. तो फिर क्या? It had become, it must have become more less safe for women. So it is completely possible because of the cycle of the civilization.
And pollution is another monster plaguing our cities. In Ayodhya, we are told the water was so clean and sweet that it was like drinking sugarcane juice. Ikshukandar sodakam. And here is another interesting adjective Valmiki has used for Ayodhya. Gruhair vichitrai rupashobhitam. Adorned with houses of eclectic design or experimental architecture. Sounds like the Shard, the Gherkin, and the walkie-talkie buildings in London. You may or may not like them, but they are different for sure. As an aside, If we were to match the description of Ayodhya as told by Valmiki with cities of today, which city would have the closest match? Now, a city is not just roads and buildings. What kind of life did the people of Ayodhya lead? How did they govern themselves? We will see this in the next episode. But one more thing before we end. On the question whether the story of Ram is fact or fiction, consider this. If you look at the description of Ayodhya as given by Valmiki, wide roads, buildings in neat rows, zoning for different commercial areas, high-rise buildings, safety for women, clean water. Would it have been possible for a poet to even conceive of such a city if civilization at that time was primitive? So primitive that supposedly man barely made it from one crop season to the next, from one hunt to the next. Either Valmiki had such implausible imagination, or what Valmiki wrote was what he saw. Now don't get me wrong, this is no call for some return to a perfect hoary past. We are just trying to understand things as they were. Iti ha asa. That is how it happened.
That is a valid question. Imagine एक society जहाँ पे people are living in caves, ठीक है, and they are hunting, gathering, living like that. Would it be possible for someone to imagine moats? These not just the architectural aspect of the city, but also the cultural aspect of the city as well. कि जहाँ पे women roamed around freely, जहाँ पे there were this garden, there were all the other things like buildings with experimental architecture. I don't think that's possible. कितना भी imagination कर लो, ठीक है? So I don't think that is possible, because even if it is, would you say that is it technically possible? Yes, but it's a very long call. So I don't think that's something we should at least consider. तो चलो देखते हैं आगे. We'll watch more episodes and things will become more clear. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here till the very end, and I'll see you guys in the next one.